remaining exactly who you have always been.
Because of this dynamic, Ibarra emphasizes the absolute necessity of shifting connections. You cannot become a new person while exclusively surrounded by the people who demand the old you. You must actively seek out and integrate into communities of practice.
Right, a community of practice is a group of individuals who are already operating within the domain you are trying to enter, or who share the new set of values you are trying to adopt. Let's look at the example of Harris from the text.
Harris was an executive trying to navigate away from the corporate ladder, and he didn't find his breakthrough by talking to his old golf buddies.
No, he joined an intentional community, a group of lay therapists who gathered to train and support each other.
Harris found what psychologists call a secure base. In developmental psychology, a toddler learning to walk will venture out a few steps, but they constantly look back at their parent, their secure base, to ensure they are safe.
Adults undergoing a radical identity shift require a secure base as well. But because the family unit is often destabilized by the change, that secure base must be found externally.
The community of lay therapists provided Harris with a safe harbor to practice his new identity. They didn't know the corporate Harris, so they had no preconceived expectations to force upon him. He was free to prototype without judgment.
And as you build these new connections, you are forced to explain who you are and what you are doing. The sources highlight the importance of how you narrate this journey. Culturally, we're obsessed with the hero's journey, aren't we?
Oh, completely. The protagonist receives a call to adventure, faces a series of escalating challenges, slays the dragon, claims the treasure, and returns home completely transformed, with the narrative tied up in a neat chronological bow.
The hero's journey is fantastic for cinema, but it is a toxic framework for a modern career transition. If you measure your nonlinear pivot against the hero's journey, you will constantly feel like a failure.
Real transitions involve backsliding, dead ends, side quests that go nowhere, and periods of profound stagnation.
If your expectation is a clean narrative arc, the messiness of the neutral zone will convince you that you are doing it wrong.
The alternative framework proposed is the learning plot. A learning plot discards the concept of a final, permanent destination.
The narrative isn't about slaying a dragon to win a forever job. It is a story of continuous adaptation, ongoing struggle, and iterative growth.
The goal is not closure. The goal is becoming proficient at navigating the permanent data state of your own life. Every time you introduce yourself to a new connection in your community of practice, you draft a new version of this learning plot, observing what feels authentic and what feels forced.
But we must confront the primary mechanism that prevents people from ever drafting that first plot. I mean, we can analyze T-shaped skills, Odyssey plans, and communities of practice indefinitely. The stark reality is that the vast majority of people never take the first step into the neutral zone due to the paralyzing physiological fear of failure.
If the experiment blows up in your face, the consequences feel catastrophic.
Exactly. How do we dismantle that psychological barrier? The sources bring in the perspective of Faith Hill, a life coach who utilizes neurolinguistic programming, or NLP. The foundational premise she introduces is pretty jarring. The fear of failure is not a factual reflection of reality. It is a fabricated narrative.
When you draft an email to a potential new mentor, or you register a domain name for a side project, your heart races, your palms sweat. The physiological response is entirely real.
Right.
But the cognitive interpretation, the belief that you are in mortal danger, is a glitch in our evolutionary hardware. The human brain, specifically the amygdala, evolved to protect us from apex predators.
It is an ancient survival machine that interprets any uncertainty or deviation from the known path as a literal threat to your life.
So when I look at the prospect of leaving a miserable but stable corporate job to start a consultancy, my conscious mind sees a career move, but my amygdala sees me walking out of a safe cave directly toward a saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly the mechanism. The brain prioritizes survival over self-actualization every single time. In the framework of NLP, you have to consciously override that ancient programming by adopting a core axiom. There is no such thing as failure. There is only feedback.
I want to push back on this a little bit because no failure, only feedback sounds like the kind of toxic positivity you find on a motivational poster in a break room.
Right, yeah.
Let's ground this in reality. Let's say a listener takes a leap, funds a prototype for a new product, and the market completely rejects it. They lose $10,000. Calling that feedback feels incredibly dismissive of the real material loss. How is that not a failure?
It is a failure of the specific tactic, but is not a failure of the identity.
Okay, unpack that.
The NLP framework requires separating the outcome of the experiment from your intrinsic worth. If you lose the $10,000 and conclude, I am a failure and I should never try anything again, the amygdala has won. You have catastrophized the event.
But if you look at the loss and conclude, the market does not value this specific feature set at this price point. You have extracted the feedback.
Exactly. You acquired high-fidelity data that moves you closer to the correct variable. But accessing that analytical state requires dismantling the cognitive distortions that Hill outlines.
She highlights several toxic mental patterns that hijack our transitions. The most prevalent is catastrophizing.
This is the brain's tendency to bypass all logical probabilities and fixate exclusively on the absolute worst-case scenario, treating it as a guaranteed outcome.
Like, if I ask to drop to a 4-day work week to explore a side hustle, my boss will fire me, I'll lose my house, and my family will starve.
It is an escalation of assumptions with zero empirical evidence. Then there is all-or-nothing thinking, which just destroys incremental progress.
If your goal was to secure 3 freelance clients by Friday, and you only secure 1, the all-or-nothing brain labels the entire endeavor a total failure, completely discounting the progress of acquiring the single client.
And the most insidious pattern is the unconscious linking of past traumas to current, unrelated events. You completely bombed a public speaking engagement in college. It was humiliating. 15 years later, you are contemplating a pivot that requires pitching your services, and your nervous system triggers a full panic attack.
The current situation is entirely new. You have a decade of professional experience now, but your brain has filed it in the same folder as the college trauma.
To short-circuit these distortions, Hill utilizes a 16-question diagnostic framework. We won't dissect all 16, but analyzing a few of the core questions reveals how effectively they dismantle the fear narrative. The first critical question is, what evidence do I actually have that this fear is true?
And when you force yourself to write down the empirical evidence, the page is usually blank.
You fear that entering a new industry at 40 will make you a laughingstock. But what is the evidence? Have you actually attempted it? Have you surveyed industry professionals about their views on age and transition?
The fear is an entirely internally generated projection, devoid of external data.
The next question shifts the focus from the risk of action to the risk of inaction. When I say yes to this fear, what am I saying no to?
That is a profound reframing of opportunity cost. If I say yes to the fear of failure and I stay in the miserable job, I am explicitly saying no to my own autonomy. I am saying no to the possibility of financial upside.
I am saying no to discovering the upper limits of my own capabilities. The safety of the cave suddenly looks incredibly expensive.
Which naturally leads to the next inquiry. What will not happen if I keep believing this fear? It forces you to confront the ghost of your unlived life. What version of yourself will permanently cease to exist if you allow the amygdala to dictate your career trajectory?
And the capstone question, which attempts to completely bypass the amygdala. What would I do if I knew I could not fail?
If you temporarily remove the risk of negative feedback from the simulation, what does your brain naturally gravitate toward? That answer is usually the truest compass heading you possess.
And yet, even with the NLP tools and the realization that fear is just data, the transition still requires courage. The fear of financial instability, the fear of losing status, these are tethered to the physical world.
The fear spikes precisely because the outcome of the transition matters to your core values. The absence of fear would indicate apathy.
Yes. The presence of fear is the physiological proof that you are approaching a meaningful threshold.
The only mechanism to deflate the fear is forward momentum. You cannot logic your way out of a fear response. You can only act your way out.
Taking a single micro step, sending one email, writing one draft, attending one meetup for your community of practice generates real-world feedback that begins to override the catastrophic projection.
Let's assume the listener has begun to navigate this. They are running Odyssey plan experiments, they are enduring the neutral zone, they are managing the fear. A critical structural question remains.
What's that?
If we are dismantling the linear career and dropping our old rocks regarding salary and status, what new metric do we use to ensure this chaotic, nonlinear path actually leads to a fulfilling life? We need a new philosophical operating system.
We really do. This requires a fundamental reevaluation of how we define the purpose of work. The sources direct us to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's entry on work and labor, which provides a stark diagnosis of our current cultural operating system.
We are the ideological heirs of the Protestant work ethic. We exist in a culture that completely centers human value on economic output.
The permeation of this work-centric ideology is so absolute that it infects our language regarding non-economic activities. We do not exercise, we work out.
We do not process trauma, we do the grief work. A relationship requires working on her.
We have commodified the entirety of the human experience into a framework of labor and optimization.
The philosophical text draws a crucial, illuminating distinction between work and leisure. In this framework, work is defined as an activity that creates objective value for others, value that can theoretically be separated from the worker.
You build a spreadsheet, you design a logo, you perform surgery. The value is received by the client or the patient. Because it is objective, work can often be delegated or outsourced.
Leisure, conversely, creates subjective value.
And subjective value is entirely intrinsic and non-transferable. The text uses a brilliant, simple illustration. You cannot hire someone to sunbathe on your behalf.
That's such a great image. You cannot pay an assistant to experience the emotional resonance of a symphony of now. The utility of leisure is inextricably bound to your personal, subjective experience of the moment.
A successful career reinvention often requires what the researchers call a deep change in how we balance that objective output with our subjective existence. The source material shares the narrative of Dan McIvey, a high-level corporate executive.
Dan took a sabbatical and was forced to confront the reality that he had completely fused his fundamental self-worth with his executive title. He was generating massive objective value for his shareholders, but his subjective ledger was bankrupt.
His identity was entirely I-shaped, built around corporate dominance. To survive his transition, Dan had to execute a deep change. When he was offered another highly lucrative CEO position, the old Dan would have accepted it instantly for the ego validation.
The post-transition Dan rejected it. He realized that the objective value he would create for the board of directors was not worth the subjective cost of missing his children's formative years. He consciously reweighted his life away from pure labor and towards subjective value.
If a listener is attempting to reweight their own life, we have a phenomenal resource from Isabel Goncalves. She outlines 4 global lifestyle philosophies that offer distinct, actionable frameworks for balancing ambition with humanity.
Let's break these down, starting with the Japanese concept of ikigai.
Ikigai roughly translates to a reason for being, or the reason you get out of bed in the morning. In Western career coaching, it is often visualized as a Venn diagram requiring the intersection of 4 specific elements.
Right, what you deeply love, what you are innately good at, what the world objectively needs, and what the market is willing to pay you for.
Let's analyze the friction when those circles do not overlap, because that is where most people are trapped. If you have what you love and what you are good at, but no one will pay you for it, you have a passionate hobby, but you will eventually starve.
And if you have what you are paid for and what you are good at, but you don't love it and the world doesn't need it, you have a comfortable profession, but you will suffer from chronic emptiness.
Ikigai is the relentless pursuit of the epicenter. It is the operational compass for your career experiments. When you are running a test in the neutral zone, you evaluate the feedback against those 4 pillars.
Did it generate revenue? Did it utilize my skills? Did it serve a purpose? Did I enjoy the process? If the experiment fails on one of those pillars, you iterate.
Next, we move to Scandinavia to examine the Swedish concept of lagom. It is often summarized as the Goldilocks principle. Not too little, not too much, just right. But how does that philosophical concept actually function as a metric in a hyper-competitive workplace?
In our Anglo-American corporate culture, the primary metric for dedication is excess. We glorify the 80-hour work week. We wear burnout as a badge of honor, signaling our commitment. Lagom violently rejects this premise.
In a culture governed by lagom, working excessive overtime is not viewed as heroic. It is viewed as a failure of competence. It signals that you are incapable of managing your time or setting appropriate boundaries.
Applying lagom to a nonlinear career means optimizing for sustainability rather than maximum immediate extraction. When you are in the exploit and explore phase, you must apply lagom to your energy reserves.
If you push the exploration phase to the point of exhaustion, you will crash and retreat to your old identity. Lagom demands that you locate the exact threshold of effort that allows you to make progress today without stealing energy from tomorrow.
Staying in the Nordic region, we look at the Danish concept of hygge. Globally, hygge has been commodified into an aesthetic of wool socks, crackling fireplaces, and hot cocoa. But at its core, applied to a professional environment, hygge is about the architecture of psychological safety.
Goncalves writes about integrating the spirit of hygge into the boardroom. This connects directly to the research on high-performing teams, like Google's Project Aristotle, which found that psychological safety is the primary driver of success.
A Higg workplace is one where the interpersonal warmth allows you to drop the corporate armor. If your Odyssey plan leads you to a highly lucrative career, but the daily environment requires you to constantly defend yourself from toxic office politics, the absence of Higg will eventually destroy your subjective well-being. The environment must foster authentic connection.
Finally, we examine the Southern African philosophy of Ubuntu. The phrase translates to "I am because we are." It is a profound declaration of interconnectedness, asserting that individual humanity is entirely dependent on the humanity of the collective.
It is the ultimate check against toxic individualism. When you are navigating the neutral zone and building your T-shaped portfolio, Ubuntu asks a critical question of your trajectory. Does your personal reinvention actively elevate the community around you?
When you shift connections and build your new community of practice, are you merely extracting value from them, or are you contributing to the shared ecosystem? A career path that enriches you while isolating you from the collective violates the principle of Ubuntu.
If we synthesize these four philosophies, they provide a holistic dashboard for navigating the chaos of a nonlinear career.
It's like, if Ikigai is the engine driving your career forward, Lagom is the brakes keeping you from crashing into burnout, and Hig is the comfortable interior of the car.
And you rely on Ubuntu to ensure your journey is connected to the broader human experience outside that car.
That is the complete framework right there. Let's pull all the threads together for the listener as we conclude this deep dive. If you are standing at the edge of your current career path, feeling the gravity of the sunk cost fallacy, realize that your scattered, diverse experiences are your greatest asset.
You are not lost. You are building the horizontal crossbar of a resilient T-shaped professional.
The imperative is to stop agonizing over a master plan in isolation. Shift immediately to the test and learn methodology.
Design 3 Odyssey plans. Share them with a community that will nurture the inquiry rather than critique the logistics, and launch micro-experiments to gather empirical data from the real world.
When you take those steps, you will inevitably plunge into the neutral zone. Acknowledge the liminal space. It will feel like a hurricane. Resist the frantic urge to retreat to the safety of your old identity.
Exploit your legacy skills to survive, actively shift your connections to find a secure base, and start drafting your new learning plot.
And when the amygdala floods your system with the fear of failure, interrogate it. Use the NLP framework to recognize that the fear is a projection, not a reality. Demand evidence. Calculate the terrifying cost of inaction.
And recognize that every misstep is simply high-fidelity feedback guiding you closer to your Ikigai.
This has been a massive paradigm shift, but there is one final provocative concept from our research stack that we need to address before we go. We established early on that technological acceleration killed the three-stage life. But the implications of AI on the concept of career planning go even deeper.
They do. A brief note in the source material points toward the work of AI researcher Kenneth Stanley, specifically his concept of novelty search.
When computer scientists attempt to train an AI system to solve a highly complex maze-like problem, giving the AI a fixed linear objective often results in failure. The AI gets trapped in dead ends trying to optimize for the goal.
Stanley discovered that the system achieves massive, unexpected breakthroughs when the objective is completely removed, and the AI is rewarded solely for exploring novel, untried paths.
It succeeds by aggressively exploring the unknown, rather than meticulously planning a route to a known destination. The implications for human careers are staggering.
As generative AI systems increasingly automate the linear, predictable, easily planned tasks of the global economy, the economic value of an I-shaped human worker will plummet to zero.
The future economy will exclusively reward human novelty search, the ability to connect disparate ideas, to navigate ambiguity, and to synthesize horizontal skills in ways a machine cannot predict.
Which means the chaos we have been discussing today, the liminality of the neutral zone, the relentless pivoting, the continuous iteration of possible selves, is not a temporary bug in the modern career. It is the defining feature.
We are moving toward a reality where the neutral zone is the permanent state of the human professional experience.
The question the listener must confront is not how to finalize their career plan, but whether they possess the psychological fortitude to live permanently in the beta version of themselves.
We are not static monuments. We are software that requires continuous updates. It's a daunting prospect, But fundamentally, it is an invitation to absolute freedom. You are never finished.
Never finish.
We want to express our deep gratitude to you, the listener, for enduring the hurricane with us on this deep dive. The era of the paved highway is over, but the river is entirely navigable if you understand the currents. Your only assignment today is to launch one small experiment. Drop one rock. Test one possible self. The water might be turbulent, but the momentum is finally in your hands. We will see you on the next deep dive.